Living alone isn't always a choice. Sometimes it's the result of giving everything in relationships where you ended up losing yourself. However, there comes a moment when solitude stops being an enemy and becomes a teacher. The noise fades, expectations dissolve, and for the first time, you have the chance to truly hear yourself without interference. But why are we so afraid of that silence? Why do we believe that being with someone, anyone, is better than being with ourselves? Maybe because no one ever taught us that solitude can also mean wholeness. Many people stay in relationships that are already lifeless, held together by fear of emptiness, by habit, or by the hope that things will change. Others jump from one connection to another, trying to fill a void that can't be filled from the outside. And in their effort to avoid being alone, they end up more lost than ever. But there's a turning point, a truth that changes everything. When you learn to be with yourself, without running away or begging for presence, you discover a freedom that no relationship can give you. This video isn't about giving up on love. It's about learning to choose it from a place of peace, not from need. If this is your first time here, my name is Gabriel. I speak to you from the experience of someone who once confused love with dependency and companionship with worth. Here, we share Stoic wisdom applied to real life, to live with serenity and dignity even when others don't change. I invite you to subscribe and stay until the end, because the final lesson of this video will be a special guide for those who, after healing, wish to choose a life partner with wisdom. Let's begin. For much of life, solitude appears as an uncomfortable shadow we try to avoid. We were taught that being alone means failure, a lack of love, or a sad destiny. But Stoicism reminds us of something very different. What hurts isn't solitude itself, but our resistance to being with ourselves. It's in that space where the mind, restless at first, begins to calm down and reveal everything that was once drowned out by noise. When we stop constantly searching outward, an inner voice begins to rise, the one that's been asking to be heard for years. And it's there that the soul finally reconnects with its center. The fear of being alone runs deep. It comes from the belief that we're only worthy when someone chooses us. But that idea is a cultural trap that steals our emotional independence. Conscious solitude is not a punishment, it's a path to self-knowledge. The Stoics taught that nothing external can take away our peace if we master our inner world. Seen from that perspective, living alone is an act of strength and freedom. You learn that you are enough, that you don't need someone else to hold you up in order to live fully. So far, we've seen that solitude is not the enemy, but an opportunity. But there's something deeper. Chosen solitude is fertile, like a desert that seems empty, yet holds seeds that only bloom in silence. In that barren land, dormant passions awaken, forgotten talents resurface, and a calm emerges that doesn't depend on anyone's emotional tides. Living alone doesn't mean closing yourself off. It means opening up to the possibility of living authentically. Often, the problem isn't being alone, but not knowing what to do with yourself once the external noise fades. That discomfort is the doorway to growth. Whoever walks through it learns to stand on their own emotionally, to face their thoughts without fear, and to turn daily life into something sacred. Little by little, home stops being a sad refuge and becomes a temple of clarity. How many times do we search outside for the peace that can only be built within? Each day of solitude is a practice. It's not about filling the time with distractions, but about learning to be present. Healthy solitude teaches you to look inward with kindness, not judgment. It's in that silence that you begin to understand what you need, what you want, and what you're no longer willing to tolerate. Instead of waiting for others to validate your worth, you learn to give it to yourself. In this way, living alone stops being a temporary state and becomes a conscious choice. Those who embrace their solitude don't close themselves off to love. They prepare to love without losing themselves. Because only those who have found themselves can share without depending, and only those who know their own desert can truly value the oasis when it appears. This is the first lesson on the path. Solitude is not something to suffer, it's something to honor. And from that very honor comes the strength to move forward to what comes next. Love shouldn't hurt, yet it often does because we mistake it for need. We believe that without the other person we can't be okay, that their presence completes us, and that their absence means loss. At that point, love stops being freedom and becomes dependence. Stoicism teaches that anything rooted in the external is fragile because the external is beyond our control. When we place our stability in someone else, we become vulnerable to the ups and downs of their emotions, decisions, or absences. The result is a love filled with anxiety and fear, not peace. The roots of this dependence often go back to emotional childhood. We seek in others the approval, safety, or validation we never learned to give ourselves. And though it might look like love, it's really a form of refuge. But no refugee built on fear can last. Epictetus said that whoever needs another to feel complete has forgotten their own divine nature. In other words, loving from lack is forgetting that we are already whole. Emotional dependence isn't healed by seeking more love, but by learning to hold yourself up. We've already seen that solitude can be fertile, but when it's hastily filled with a relationship, it becomes a trap. Some people fear being alone so much that they accept relationships that erase them, bending to what the other wants, silencing their truth just to keep company. That silence, which seems like peace, is actually self-abandonment. And there's no greater loneliness than being with someone and still feeling invisible. I remember a story I was told years ago. A woman, after decades of marriage, realized she had lost her voice. She had learned to speak softly, not to bother, to say yes when she wanted to say no. When her husband died, the first thing she felt wasn't sadness, but confusion. She didn't know who she was without him. Her solitude wasn't new, it had simply become visible. That story, so common, shows what happens when love is mistaken for the need not to disappear. Loving from dependence is like trying to fly while clinging to a stone. No matter how hard you try, you can't lift off. Stoicism invites us to a different kind of love called amor fati, loving life exactly as it is, including its impermanence. Those who love freely don't demand permanence, they value presence. They can enjoy deeply, but also let go without resentment. That's the difference between a heart that possesses and one that shares. Freeing yourself from emotional dependence doesn't mean becoming cold or indifferent. It means learning to love without losing your dignity, without betraying your own voice. In a healthy relationship, the other person isn't a crutch, but a companion on the path. If one falls, the other supports, but neither kneels. Learning this transforms the way we experience love because we stop fearing loss and start trusting our ability to stand on our own. When love stops being an attempt to fill emptiness and becomes a conscious choice, everything changes. You no longer seek the other to survive, but to share who you already are. That is the highest form of love, the one born from the meeting of two complete people. And it's toward that fullness that the next step on the path leads. When silence stops hurting and begins to feel like a refuge, a unique opportunity appears. Learning to enjoy yourself. Many people can be alone, but few know how to truly keep themselves company, and that difference changes everything. Enjoying your own company isn't selfishness, it's emotional maturity. It means being at peace with who you are, without needing to decorate or hide it. The Stoics would say it's the practice of living in harmony with your own nature, accepting life as it is, starting with yourself. For a long time, self-love was reduced to empty phrases or promises of self-improvement. But in reality, it's something quieter. It's about caring for the everyday. Eating well, not just for health, but out of respect for your body. Keeping your home tidy, not out of obligation, but because your surroundings reflect your soul. Walking, breathing, writing, praying, or meditating all become acts of friendship with yourself. Self-love isn't something you preach, it's something you practice in the simple things. And when you begin to treat yourself with dignity, you stop tolerating relationships that deny it. So far, we've seen that love shouldn't be dependence, and that solitude can be fertile. But that fertile ground must be cultivated. Enjoying yourself means rediscovering the small pleasures of being alive, having a cup of coffee without watching the clock, listening to music without multitasking, cooking a meal calmly just for yourself without thinking it's a waste. These gestures train presence. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the mind finds peace when it focuses on what it's doing without wanting to be anywhere else. Enjoying yourself is exactly that, living fully in the present. There's something deeply liberating in discovering that you can feel good on your own. Not because you've given up on love, but because you no longer depend on it to exist. From that point on, relationships aren't about filling gaps, they're about sharing fullness. Someone who enjoys their own company becomes attractive in a different way. They radiate calm. They don't need to convince, control, or beg. They simply are, and that quiet presence becomes their purest form of love. The practice of enjoying yourself doesn't erase sadness or nostalgia, but it changes your relationship with them. Instead of running away, you learn to listen, to recognize that they too are part of the human experience, and by doing so, pain stops ruling you. Serenity arises when we accept that everything comes and goes, and that true stability lies in how we treat ourselves amid that flow. That is the foundation of inner strength. This isn't about isolation, but about companionship. Those who enjoy their own company become their best allies, and from there, they can offer presence without losing their center. As Seneca said, no one can be a friend to another if they are not a friend to themselves. Learning to enjoy yourself is learning to be that loyal friend who never abandons you, no matter how much things change on the outside. If this message is helping you see solitude differently, I invite you to take an active part in this community. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and tell me your name and where you're listening from. I read every message, and it brings me joy to know from which corner of the world we're walking together through this process. And if you'd like to add something to this conversation, share what daily habit helps you enjoy your own company more. That exchange strengthens us all. There's a deep freedom that arrives the day you stop needing, not because you've given up on love, but because you've stopped depending on it. That inner stillness is one of the most noble fruits of chosen solitude. Living without need doesn't mean living without connection. It means understanding that nothing and no one can define who you are. Marcus Aurelius put it calmly. He who lives in harmony with himself lives in harmony with the universe. When that coherence is reached, love is no longer a search, it's an encounter. The desire not to need doesn't come from pride, but from peace. In a society that measures worth through companionship or approval, learning to be enough on your own almost feels rebellious. But that rebellion is a form of healing. Those who stand firmly within themselves no longer settle for less than they deserve, and paradoxically, when you stop needing, you begin to choose more clearly. Lack confuses, but calm clarifies. Up to now, we've explored the importance of enjoying your own company, and now we take it a step further, understanding that true strength is born when nothing external can shake your center. The Stoics practiced this emotional independence every day. They knew that everything external, opinions, affection, companionship, is unstable. That's why, instead of fearing its loss, they learn to be grateful while it lasted and to let go when it was gone. It's a difficult lesson, but a freeing one. Nothing ruled by chance can be the foundation of your peace. When you no longer need, you love differently. You don't seek to fill, you seek to share. You don't demand, you understand. You don't beg for attention, you offer it. That kind of love doesn't come from urgency, but from abundance. It's a love that respects the other's rhythm, that doesn't fear distance or silence. Those who have found inner peace don't fear loss because they know they won't lose themselves. And from that place, every relationship becomes more genuine. The peace of not needing also transforms how you relate to the world. You stop trying to prove, justify, or impress. You begin to live simply with gratitude. Life feels lighter and your days become more aligned. It's not about indifference, it's about balance. Peace doesn't erase emotions, it simply stops them from ruling you. Knowing that you don't need anything to be well makes you free, and that freedom is the soil where mature love grows. There comes a moment when you realize you're not alone, even if no one is beside you, because inner peace keeps you company. That's the difference between merely surviving and truly living. The person who has learned not to need doesn't retreat into isolation, they open up to the world from a place of calm. They don't fear loss because they've already gained the most important thing, their serenity. And it's precisely from that serenity that we can recognize when a relationship lacks roots, the topic we'll explore next. Some relationships grow quickly, like wildflowers after the rain, but crumble at the first gust of wind. They are connections without roots, held together by the thrill of the moment, the fear of being alone, or the need to feel loved. At first they seem intense, but over time their fragility becomes clear. Stoicism warns us about this kind of union. When two people come together without truly knowing or sustaining themselves internally, the relationship becomes an extension of their emptiness, not their strength. Rootless relationships usually share one thing in common: a rush to fill the silence. They begin with promises, idealizations, and an urgent need to feel that this time it's real. But behind that speed hides fear. Fear of not being enough, of never finding love again, of time passing and being left behind. And when fear is the one choosing, what looks like love turns into attachment. Those who haven't learned to stand with themselves cling to the other just to avoid falling, yet both end up falling anyway. We've talked about the peace that comes from not needing, and now we can see the contrast. What happens when that peace is missing? Seneca said, "Nothing solid can be built on what you do not master." If you haven't mastered your emotions, if you haven't healed your story, then the relationship is built on sand. Small conflicts become walls, silences turn into punishments, and the bond fills with reproaches neither person fully understands. In such cases, there are no roots, only branches that bend easily. The problem isn't love itself, but not knowing where your love comes from. If love is born from fear, it will be fragile. If it's born from calm, it will endure. The Stoics taught that there's nothing wrong with desiring connection, but everything wrong with depending on it to define who you are. A strong relationship is built when both people know how to be well on their own. Two trees with firm roots can intertwine without losing their independence, but two stems without roots end up suffocating each other in their attempt to stay upright. In practice, recognizing a rootless relationship isn't always easy. It often hides behind passion, care, or intensity. But the clearest sign is losing your own center. When you start silencing what you feel, acting out of fear, or justifying the unjustifiable, love has already turned into dependence. Seeing that clearly, without guilt, is an act of maturity. It's not about blaming the other, but about understanding what part of you needed that relationship to feel alive. Letting go of a rootless relationship isn't failure, it's clarity. It means choosing peace over habit, truth over illusion. Those who dare to do it don't end up empty, they end up free, because what once seemed like love was only a reflection of the fear of being alone. And by recognizing that, you reclaim your vital energy. From that clarity, you can heal what hurt without closing your heart. And it's precisely that healing before loving again that marks the next step on this journey. Healing isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about learning to look back without pain. It's the process of cleansing the wounds left by relationships where you lost yourself trying to hold on to what was already gone. Many people, after a breakup, feel the urge to fill the void right away. But Stoicism teaches that no wound can heal without room to breathe. Solitude at this stage becomes a balm. It's the time your soul needs to rebuild itself without the pressure to prove that you're already fine. Often, the real challenge isn't leaving the other person, it's leaving behind the version of yourself that existed in that relationship. Healing means letting go of old dynamics, learned patterns, and the constant need for control or approval. Epictetus put it clearly, "You can't heal if you keep seeking relief in the source of your pain." That's why healing begins the moment you stop looking outward and start taking responsibility for what still hurts inside. We've already seen how rootless relationships crumble when built on need. Healing is the opposite. It's learning to build from within. It requires patience, humility, and deep honesty. You have to ask yourself, what part of me chose that relationship? What was I seeking, fearing, expecting? Not to punish yourself, but to understand. Because without understanding, the cycle repeats. Healing doesn't happen automatically. It happens when you dare to know yourself truthfully. A powerful practice in this process is to speak with your past self. Imagine sitting face to face with the version of you who clung, who suffered, who didn't understand. Talk to them with compassion, not reproach. Tell them, "We've learned. We don't need to live that way anymore." That simple act of visualization can do more than 1,000 pieces of advice. Because forgiveness isn't always about others, it's often about forgiving yourself for not knowing how to protect your heart sooner. Forgiveness, however, doesn't mean reconciling with the one who hurt you or pretending it never happened. It means releasing the weight. It means no longer carrying the story as if it was still happening. Seneca said that nothing hurts more than reliving what has already passed. That's why healing is learning to close your eyes, breathe, and give thanks for the lesson. Every wound seen with awareness transforms into wisdom. And there comes a moment when the wound stops being defined by pain and starts becoming a source of strength. You realize that everything you lived through, even the hardest moments, was necessary to learn how to love yourself. From then on, loving again won't be repeating, it will be choosing from a new place. The person who is healed doesn't fear love, but doesn't seek it to escape either. They can be alone or with someone and still remain themselves. That's the clearest sign that healing is real. When the heart is clean, love stops being a risk and becomes a gift. There's no fear of losing because you no longer lose yourself. And from that place of balance, the possibility of building genuine relationships is born. The topic we'll explore next. To truly love isn't about finding someone who completes you, it's about sharing life with someone who's already whole. That's the essence of a healthy bond. When two people come together from a place of fullness, love stops being a need and becomes a daily choice. You don't look for someone to fix, save, or soothe you, but someone to walk beside you. Mature love is a meeting between two freedoms that respect each other, not between two voids trying to be filled. A true connection isn't built on promises but on consistency, the harmony between what's said and what's done. It doesn't require grand gestures, just steadiness. And though that sounds simple, it's the hardest thing to achieve without inner roots. The Stoics spoke of virtue as the foundation of every healthy relationship, to be just, honest, patient, and compassionate. These virtues aren't improvised in a relationship, they're cultivated in solitude in daily life, in how you treat yourself. We've already understood that healing before loving is essential. From that healing, relationships become spaces for mutual growth. Conflict is no longer feared because differences aren't seen as threats, but as opportunities to learn. Emotionally mature people don't argue to win, they communicate to understand. Vulnerability stops being weakness and becomes a bridge. And respect is no longer demanded, it's given freely. True love doesn't suffocate or confine. It gives space. It allows the other to grow, explore, and make mistakes. Trust replaces control. Silence isn't distance, it's a shared breath. Marcus Aurelius said that nothing is more powerful than one who masters themselves. The same applies to love. Those who master their ego can love without trying to possess. And when both achieve that, the bond becomes a refuge, not a cage. In real life, building healthy relationships isn't about perfection. There will be disagreements, frustrations, and hard days. But the difference lies in how they're faced. When the goal is to protect the connection without losing peace, love matures. Two conscious people don't seek to be right. They seek to make sense together. That simple difference separates relationships that grow from those that fall apart. A true connection also thrives on balance between giving and receiving. The giving isn't always equal, but the intention always is. When you give from inner abundance, you don't expect an immediate return because you trust that life always gives back in other ways. Every gesture, every word, and every silence becomes part of a deep conversation between two souls that recognize each other. Building true connections is the natural result of having gone through solitude, dependence, and healing. It's the point where love stops hurting and begins to inspire. And for those who've made it this far on the journey, there's one last reward, a practical guide to wisely choose the person who will walk with you in the next chapter of life. That will be our special closing. Getting to this point is already a victory. It means you've walked the full path. You've understood the value of solitude, released your neediness, healed what hurt, and now you're ready to open your heart with awareness. But before you do, it's worth pausing and asking yourself clearly, who are you inviting to walk beside you? Not every companion brings growth, and not every connection is love. Choosing wisely isn't about fearing mistakes. It's about respecting yourself. The first filter is serenity. If someone brings you peace, they respect you. If they constantly make you anxious, manipulate, or confuse you, it's not love, it's chaos. Stoicism teaches that peace is the best indicator that something aligns with your nature. A healthy bond doesn't drain you, it replenishes you. It doesn't ask you to shrink to fit, it invites you to expand. Always ask yourself, who am I when I'm with this person? Do I feel free, or do I try too hard to please? The answer says more than any romantic declaration ever could. The second filter is consistency. Words can move you, but actions reveal the truth. Someone who promises respect must show it in the smallest gestures. Someone who speaks of love must sustain it with patience and care. Don't seek perfection, seek reliability. The Stoics valued conduct over eloquence, knowing that true character shows when no one is watching. If someone is kind only when it benefits them, that's not love, it's strategy. We've seen that healthy love grows from inner calm. That's why the third filter is emotional independence. The right partner isn't someone who needs you, it's someone who chooses you every day without depending on you. Two mature people walk side by side without losing themselves. When one tries to live through the other, the relationship becomes a burden. True union doesn't chain, it frees, and that shared freedom is the sign of a bond worth nurturing. The fourth filter is shared purpose. It's not about having the same tastes or identical beliefs, but about walking in a similar direction. Being with someone whose vision of life clashes with yours will wear down your spirit. There's no future when one looks north and the other south. A wise bond is one where both understand that love isn't a destination, it's a journey, and that true companionship is born from looking toward the same horizon. And finally, the fifth filter is reciprocity. No love can thrive if you're always the one giving, understanding, or repairing. Love isn't about carrying the other, it's about walking together. If you constantly feel drained, exhausted, or confused, it's a sign you're holding up something that should stand on its own. Remember what you've learned. You're not here to beg for love, you're here to share it. Reciprocity can't be demanded, it can only be recognized. This guide isn't meant to make you distrustful, it's meant to make you conscious. Choosing wisely is the highest form of self-love. And when self-love leads the way, decisions become simple. Whoever enters your life after you've learned to be well on your own doesn't come to complete you. They come to accompany you. And that, without a doubt, is the freest and truest kind of love. Now that this journey comes to an end, it's time to close with gratitude and remember everything we've discovered along this inner path. Reaching this point is no small thing. We've walked a deep path, from the fear of solitude to the freedom that comes from embracing it. We've talked about the power of being alone without feeling empty, the difference between love and dependence, and the calm that arises when you no longer need anything to feel complete. We've learned that relationships only bloom when they're built on the solid root of self-love, and that healing before loving again isn't a delay, it's an investment in inner peace. This journey wasn't about giving up on love, but about learning to live it from fullness, not from lack. I want to thank you deeply for staying until the end. Not everyone makes it here, and those who do show great courage, the courage to look within honestly. Thank you for joining me, for trusting these words, and for being part of this community of people who seek to grow in serenity and dignity. Your presence, your attention, and your reflections give meaning to all of this. What we do here is more than a video. It's a space where each of us learns to protect our peace, even when the world doesn't change. My name is Gabriel, and I dedicate this space to those who choose to live with purpose and balance, even when life isn't easy. Here, we share practical wisdom that teaches us to live with calm, clarity, and self-respect. Because the purpose of this work isn't to offer quick answers, but to plant questions that help you walk with more awareness and less fear. Before saying goodbye, I'd like to invite you to leave your mark in the comments. Tell me which country you're listening from, and write this phrase to seal what we've learned today. My solitude is my strength. Share it with someone who might need this message, someone who may be facing the same silence you've already learned to transform. Like the video if it's accompanied you in this process, and subscribe so we can keep growing together, with calm and with purpose. Thank you for being here. Next, you'll see 2 videos on the screen. Choose the one that resonates most with you and keep going deeper on this path of wisdom and inner freedom. May your day end with the serenity of someone who no longer fears being alone, because you've discovered that in solitude, all that's true begins.